Hey folks, 4RC here, back in the workshop after a few trips out with the Rubicon, and just wanted to give you a summary video of how it's going so far and talk about some problems I've found with the truck that I need to solve. Overall, radio gear and electronics worked absolutely fine. The front and back lipos, just over 5,000 mAh each, loads of capacity, loads of run time. Didn't need to change the batteries all day when I went out for a trip with the London scale trail runners. We did some sort of fun run but through gates, kind of competition course type stuff. Traction with, I've got lots of wheel weights in at the moment. There's a video that I'll be doing about weighting the truck. If I've done it already, I'll put a link in the description. I've got 2 rings of stick-on wheel weights on the front and 1 at the back. It does squidge the tyres down, what with all the weight on the body, but I do get loads and loads of grip, so it climbs and pulls really well. That's great. The drag brake on the Sidewinder 3 speed control that I had in there seemed pretty good. That was all fine. The only 2 problems I've seen, and these are the things that I'm trying to solve now, one is body roll, and that was primarily that the first time I had it out, I had the stock Axial shock absorbers. You see right now we've got, you can just about see there, we've got the G-made piggybacks in. The springs on the standard Axial shocks were just way too weak. This is really quite a heavy body shell. There's lots of scale accessories, extra layers of plastidip, other plastic parts, and lots of magnets all stuck on it, and it's quite heavy. It's probably, well, at least the weight of a lipo pack, maybe 2. I haven't weighed it. And what was happening was you do get a bit of a sort of torque twist. The drive shaft that comes from the central transmission going down to the axle, so we're talking about this one here, was that's rotating, and that's putting a twisting moment between the axle and the chassis. And you'll see, if you look on any kind of SCX10 video on YouTube, often you'll see that the whole truck is kind of twisted over that way, twisted over to its left. What I was finding was on my first trip out, it went over that way and it stayed that way. And it would not turn itself back without you repositioning it. As soon as you did a lot of throttle and a few bumps, it would slowly flop over and sit there again. Doesn't look great, and also from a centre of gravity point of view, if you're on a slope coming down, then you're going to get rollover. So that was bad thing number 1. I've started work on that, so by fitting these G-made piggyback shocks. These are the 93mm ones. They're a bit longer, and I can put more preload on these. They've got longer springs. One of the problems with the Axial shock absorbers is they're 2-stage. They're like a soft small spring and a bigger hard one, or whichever way around it is. But basically one of the springs squashed straight away, and the other one just didn't have enough guts to keep the body shell up. These shocks are a bit better. They're medium springs, and I've got some harder ones on order to try out. However, the piggyback makes the shock bigger, and it's fouling on my floor pan unless I bring the shock down. I could take the floor pan off, but that's going to really compromise a lot of things on my model. So I love these piggyback shocks, but I may have to get rid of them, certainly on the front. The clearance on the back is not so bad. They've got a bit more clearance, but the front is a big problem. So I've had to drop the front shocks down quite a bit, probably about 10mm, using a Rad Shape RC drop kit. You can get drop kits from all sorts of manufacturers. Now what that's done is it's dropped the shocks down, so the whole chassis has kind of gone up. I've got more wheel arch clearance, which you might think is a good thing. It is for some things, going over logs and stuff like that. This clears stuff really well and doesn't get caught. But because I've got a chassis mounted servo, look at that. That's with no weight pushing down, and you can see the whole axle. If I get this straight to the camera, the whole axle is kinked over to the left. Now as I start to compress the suspension, you can see it starts to straighten up, but look at the bump steer. Now this is a function of having a chassis mounted servo. Now it's got a panhard bar here. If you take that panhard bar off, you can't really see that because it's all black, this thing here. If you take that off, basically what happens when you try to steer is the steering doesn't move at all, and the drag bar just rocks the body shell back and forth and lifts it up and down. You have to have a panhard bar here or panhard rod, as some people call it, with a chassis mounted servo. The problem is this drag link, because the servo is not sat on the axle, as your suspension sort of compresses and extends, effectively this needs to change length, but it can't because it's a fixed length. So you end up setting your model up with a sweet spot. For mine it's kind of about there, so everything's great there and I don't get any bump steer, no torque twist. But if the suspension squashes up, it does kick over slightly to the left. That's not a problem, but because I've put more preload on the shocks, I'm actually pushing the axle way down here, and it starts to make this drag link effectively not long enough, so it's pulling the wheels over and it's just a mess. Now I could put a longer link in here and run with this much clearance, but then the whole model is jacked up really high and I've got a really bad C of G. And this is my second problem. If I'm coming down a slope at an angle and I try to turn, because there's a lot of weight on the truck, particularly in the wheel weights, and the foams in the tyres are not great, what happens is the tyre rolls over and then the suspension kicks and boom, roll over. Now for competition, this is going to go in class 2, that's a 5-point penalty. And you know, there were some gates I was running at the other weekend, I could probably roll over a good 5-6 times before I give up. So the model at the moment, in summary, is lovely. I'm really enjoying it. It looks fantastic. I'm really happy with all the accessories and how it's worked out. But from a performance point of view, the suspension is great if I'm just trailing around in the woods and driving where I want to. But if you have to go through an awkward down a slope and turn, it does not like it at all. So what are we going to do? I'm not sure. Been doing some research. The first thing I'm going to try is some different foams in the tyres. At the moment I slapped in all the wheel weights I had from a set just to get max traction. It does pull really well. I'm going to go back to no weights and see how the tyres are with rolling over, with the rim rolling over the side of the tyres like this. Also I'm going to try some foams from Crawler Innovations. They do this 2-stage foam called a double deuce. It's got a really firm inner and then a slightly softer outer. I'm going to see how they go. Hopefully that will sort of fix the tyre squashing over the rims, which is part of my rollover problem. And then the second part of the rollover problem is the fact that I'm having to preload the suspension so much to keep the body up. I have some stronger springs on order which we're going to try. And also this whole kind of nasty bump steer business with the panhard. I could run it and just say, yeah, I've only got, you know, a small amount of articulation in that zone, it's happy. I don't really like that. A few things I've read, people are suggesting moving the drag link to be on the same side, coming down at the same angle as the panhard link, so that's sloping down that way. Take this off and mount it over that side instead, so it's going in the same direction. I'm going to give that a go. And also I think possibly a more significant thing is going to be that this angle here is not a good thing. Ideally you want the drag link to come out parallel with the steering bar, so all the movement is going to be twisting the steering, not pushing against the chassis and slopping things up and down. So I've ordered a longer servo horn which will bring this link top point down. So we're going to try repositioning the drag link and try some different springs, see what happens. If that doesn't work out, I may have to think about putting the servo back on the axle. I don't really want to. I like having it chassis mounted, it keeps it out of the way and it looks scale. So that's what's happening with the rig at the moment. Overall it's good, got a lot of suspension tweaking to do. I'm going to go off now and twiddle my thumbs, wait for the post to arrive. I've got a few parts coming in from America and Korea.